Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Untamed podcast. I'm Jess,
I'm Anna.
and today we're going to be talking about rotting in real time and about brain rot. I lately have been experiencing a lot of anxiety, and I've always been a type of anxious person throughout my life, but this is the first time I'm feeling like physical effects from my anxiety, and I'm starting to sort of have panic attacks every now and again. So, something that I'm doing is trying to figure out my triggers. And one of my triggers I've noticed is social media. Surprisingly, for a social media manager, it's social media. And I really think that the brain rot has just got to me to the point of I don't want to deal with it anymore. So I force myself to not be brain rot at this point.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like also how intense social media is now, like specifically in this box of brain rot, it's so much noise. So much noise and confusing things and like lights and colors that I could see how that could get really overwhelming.
Yeah, it definitely does, especially whenever I feel like my For You page is filled with negativity and I just can't escape it. I try to look up positive things and then it just keeps finding its way to worm its way back in. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
please stay away. So, honestly, the brain rot things I feel like are kind of helpful because they're like the happy things that don't really mean anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're like a little sillier. I mean, let's start off by like describing what's your interpretation of brain rot?
My interpretation is something that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but whenever you put it down and you look at it, like if you get it type thing. But if you were to say it to someone that is outside your niche, if they don't really understand it, it's like something so niche and to you, it's like, where did you even come up with this?
I feel like I agree with what you said. I feel like my interpret my interpretation of brain rot is more about like have you seen those TikToks that are people mimicking having a conversation with quote their friend who is brain rotted and they're just like consistently using these phrases from clearly TikTok and like internet and trends and things like that. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is also like bed rotting. Like have you heard the term bed rotting?
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like they're kind of connected. Like I feel like bed rotting got this whole article written on it about how like Gen Z has this thing called bed rotting, and like I know about bed rotting. I stay bed rotting, and I think it kind of translated that into coining the term brain rotting. But I find it kind of fascinating because I think they're like quite linked. Of like, I feel like so many young people, myself literally included in that boat, enjoy spending a lot of time doing absolutely nothing but like screen 5 inches away.
Yeah,
Like I
I
looked at my
completely
screen
agree.
time. Oh my gosh. So my cousins were here this weekend and one of them just randomly asked me. He was like, "Oh, what's your screen time like?" Cuz he was seeing how much I was like doing work on my computer and I watched TV at the same time. He's like, "What is your screen time like?" I was like, "Oh, I don't even know. Like I don't check it for my own personal well-being." And it was like 8 hours. And I was like, I don't even know how we got there. And now I'm like hyper aware of it and like getting freaked out by it.
Yeah, honestly, mine is around the same time though. But I want to go back to the first thing you said about whenever you think of brain rotting, you think of people whenever you're trying to hold a conversation and all they can really say are things that they are basically mimicking from the internet. And I 100% agree with that. Um, a lot of terms I think come from the internet nowadays. Like slang has always been a thing. The 80s, they had different types of slang. We had different types of slang in high school. So I remember in high school, a lot of the ones that we would use were like on fleek, boss, lit, dead ass, things like that. And it's just cool to kind of see how things have evolved to now we have Riz, the skibbity whatever that is. People say Sigma a lot, and I honestly think it is the younger generation that uses it more, and I feel like that's a trend in itself, as in we always watch the younger generation come up with slang throughout the generations.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that exact same thing of being like, I remember being a high schooler and using new slang as it came up. And like a lot of those words are still in my vocabulary to this day. I say dead ass too frequently. When my mom was here visiting, we had like an entire breakdown conversation because she couldn't figure out how to use it in a sentence. It like didn't compute in her brain. Whereas like to me, it just felt like second nature. But I remember being that age and using new slang terms and thinking that that's just kind of what like everyone was doing, like that it had been created by older people and was being used by us like everything else was, like fashion trends, like the popular songs. And then now that like I'm 24, I'm like, no, slang is like so in this bubble of like only the very young like starting it, and then everyone else kind of picking up on it. And I couldn't see that when I was that age, obviously. But yeah, it's really interesting to look back and be like, oh, like teenagers are just making things up and we're all listening. Like we're all down with it for some reason.
Yeah. One of the trends that actually, whenever you're talking about, made me think of is the demure trend. And recently, my friend's mom used it. I can't remember exactly what the context was, but she said something along of the lines of, that was not very demure. And she was like, Mom, please, no, you're like 40. So whenever
You're
you
like, you
say
don't get
that,
it.
yeah, whenever you say it's the younger generation making it, it really truly is.
It's also like they have gotten notably more bizarre and obscure. Like, I remember if we talk about like the slang terms from our high school years, they did sort of still make sense in the language, like contextually. Like, lit to be like fun or like crazy, like made sense. Like, it ignited the flame. Or like using the word lit to describe like being like drunk or high. Like, that made sense. Some of these, like when I took the BuzzFeed quiz that was about how brain rotted are you and like how much of these terms you know, I was like, some of these things just don't even make sense. Like, they don't even seem like they're in the English language, like completely new terms as opposed to like repurposing old ones.
Yeah. I think another place that these slang words and things that people, young kids, are saying nowadays also come from YouTubers and Twitch streamers and stuff. Like, I can't remember that guy's name, but the one that says, "What's up, brother?" Do you even know what that means?
I have
Oh,
no clue,
God.
but I remember when that was like a very big trend.
Yeah.
I remember my boyfriend and my roommate said it to me once. I was like, guys, someone clue me in. What is going on?
I actually remember his name now. His name is Sketch. He is a Twitch streamer. I'm not exactly sure what video games he plays to where he streams, but he would always do that, say, "What's up, brother?" And then he had like other catchphrases and stuff, and that just caught on. So I guess it isn't just the younger generation, but I will say that I think that the younger generation really stuck to that more.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely picking it up. Maybe not from within their own like age demographic, but definitely being the ones to like popularize them.
Yeah. Also, I did take a screenshot the other day. I have to look at my camera roll to find it, but it was a whiteboard that a teacher had wrote down words that weren't allowed to be used in the classroom, and they were all words like what we're talking about. So,
That's so
I can
funny.
find it real quick.
I had seen a TikTok of a teacher who was like, these words are banned from my classroom, and the first one was pookie. And I was like, okay, pookie is a slang term recently, like currently, that I have heard like my peers in my age demographic like use pretty colloquially.
Yeah. I think I would use pookie. I almost said pukey. I think I would use that as a joke, but I don't know if I'd ever like say it seriously.
Yeah. I have one friend, she loves the word pookie. She'll call anyone pookie. I think that's so sweet.
Yeah. I think another word that I actually do hear a lot in my friend group is the word cutesy. I don't know where it originated or how it
That
started,
came
but I've
from
heard
the
it.
demure one. Very cutesy, very demure. They're
Oh,
like one and the
okay.
same.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
I will say that one. I'm less likely to say very demure, very mindful. I am known on occasion to be like very cutesy. So
Yeah,
I'll say I'll use that. That one will come up a decent amount. But I feel
yeah,
like I just use a lot less slang the older I get. And especially like I feel like at some point in my life I became sort of like almost like had disdain towards sounding like I was talking like the internet. Like I was like I don't want to be like someone who sounds like that, specifically cuz like for a period of time internet slang and like talking like the internet was basically just using AAVE or like a black accent and saying that it was like this is how everyone talks on the internet. So I remember in that moment being like I don't really think that's my vibe, and I haven't picked up much slang since then, but I have picked up very cutesy.
yeah. Personally, I think I say slay a lot and I
Yeah.
say period, but I also find myself not saying that out loud, but saying it through text message. I don't
Mm-hmm.
say it out. I'll say period to confirm things, I think, in out loud, but other than that, I think I mostly use slang with texting.
That makes a lot of sense because I feel like texting at its core was about like being abbreviated and shorter and like faster messaging. And so that would make sense that you would find slang to like be more natural in that sense than like
Yeah.
actually speaking it.
Yeah. I think something that's really interesting is the way that brands hop on to these slang words and these trends. And I think for some brands, depending on who you are, I think they could really benefit you. One of the brands that I see this work for the most, I think, is Netflix. If you've ever taken a look at their Instagram, it is basically all brain rot, all trends. Maybe not the content itself, but if you look at their captions, it is all trends and whatever is going on at the time, they use it. They're very quick with it, they're very good with it. At the same time, I look at Netflix and I think you are not one to set an example because no matter what you do, you're going to get the views, you're going to get the likes.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what Netflix does, but at the same time, you look at what they do and you think, is that helping? Like, is that a post that did better because it used slang? Or is it just because it's Netflix?
Yeah, well, I think definitely if you're going to be a brand on social media, being relatable is like a super useful tool. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk like how people talk on the internet. The advice that I would give if you were a brand wanting to sort of tap into that kind of social media marketing that was like on trend, maybe appealing to more youthful audience, two big things. Number one, actually have young people be advising like you on it. I feel like you see slang misused or trends misunderstood by brands and it just puts such a sour taste in your mouth, maybe because I do understand how to like articulate some of the slang and the trends and I'm like this just is kind of embarrassing. And then secondly, just to do that in moderation. Like I think for brands sometimes if you go full brain rot it really is going to come off like you're trying too hard because they know at the end of the day like you're a team of people. You're not just someone kind of figuring out as they go along. So I think one, definitely like consult young people on it, people who fully understand the trend, and then to use it in moderation.
Yeah. To go with the using in moderation, you want to make sure that you're adding in your brand's actual content because while you want to appeal to this different audience, you also want to keep up your own morals and your own core values. You don't want to lose sight of that.
Well, and also, if you think about content that's like adding value, like you don't want followers who are not actually interested in whatever it is you're selling or whatever it is you're like service providing. And if you're just doing trends, you're gonna get a little bit stuck in content that has less value and is more like entertainment and appeal. And you're gonna have eyes on it that like kinda isn't gonna do much for your long-term goals. Like why be on social media just to like do the social media thing? You're on social media to market, to be a part and to push your product or your service. And so if you go full brain rot and you just do trend after trend after trend, you're not actually going to convert anyone. You're not going to be speaking to the audience who's ever going to buy something from you. It's just less useful.
Yeah. And I think that it's fun to hop on these trends and everything, but like you said, I agree that you don't want to lose yourself. You don't want to make people not realize who your brand is. Like, maybe you show up on their For You page multiple times, but if they can't recognize who you are and you're not actually benefiting off of it other than views on social media, then it's probably not the strategy for you. Another thing that I think could be a negative with incorporating all of these slang words and this brain rot content is you have to be careful of cancel culture these days, because some things, they might be good in the beginning, a trend might be good in the beginning, and then suddenly it shifts. It has a shift where it's like no longer okay, it's canceled, whatever. So I think that your brand just has to be careful whenever you do follow these trends, that you watch out for where they could head.
They also, things look and sound outdated at a rate that we haven't seen before. Like, if, say, 30 years ago, you saw an ad that was calling, like, this new pair of pants groovy, you'd be like, oh, that seems kind of outdated, but, like, it's fine. Or, like, maybe it's retro. Whereas now, the trend cycle, and even, like, with words and with language, is moving so quickly that genuinely, in a matter of months, some of these, like, slang terms and trends are going to appear like, oh, that was so March of 2024, and not be as evergreen and not be as useful in your long-term strategy, which is kind of weird to say because social media is growing at such a rapid rate, and it's just this cycle that you have to jump into at some point. And so because of that, we can't, like, archive or save things in the same way like we used to be able to. So, like, yes, everything's going to be pushed down in your feed and in your stream, and it would be a rare day that someone could, like, scroll back to 2016 and see you using the term deadass incorrectly. But I think as we're seeing that turnover rate of things looking and sounding outdated get faster and faster and faster, we're going to start running into, like sometimes, do you ever get on your For You page, like, a TikTok that someone posted months prior, and you're like, why is this on my For You page today? Since things like that are, like, definitely still an option, you do have to be very mindful of how useful is this going to be? Like, how fitting will using this language be in 2 months? And consider that and keep that on your mind.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Trends absolutely go out of style. What is trending now might not be trending in a month, and they just go that quickly. It is so crazy that I also find that trends remind me of specific times. Like, until this past, like, Hurricane Helene and everything, that song, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's a type of song that's used on TikTok for hurricane videos. It was used during Hurricane Ian, and then whenever Hurricane Helene was announced and everyone was packing up to leave Florida and stuff, people were using that sound again. It's a song about, I hear the sound of thunder roaring through the wind or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember exactly how it goes.
Folsom Prison Blues.
Okay.
Yes, it's like a creepy version of Folsom Prison Blues, yeah.
Very creepy. But people started posting it to Helene, and I remember in the comments people were like, oh, this gives Ian vibes. Because they related the sound, yeah.
Or, like, do you ever get those TikToks where it's, like, summer or, like, winter 2021 core, and it'll be, like, the TikTok audios that were trending during that time? Those always trip me out because I'm like, are we experiencing nostalgia for 3 years ago? Like, shouldn't that be a bit farther back? Like, lately I've been having nostalgia for summer 2016. I feel like we're far enough away from it that I can be like, man, that was a really different time. That was like almost a decade ago. But sometimes I get ones on my TikTok that are like, 2022, like, favorite sounds, like the nostalgia. And I just get so confused by them. I'm like, that's really around the corner. Like, you could still listen to those songs if you wanted.
Yeah, so I have seen those trends where it's like, do you remember all of the 2020 TikTok sounds and stuff like that? And that gets me into the question of how do you know whenever you're really brain rot or if you're just like having memories of these trends and also you're just, you know, the trends. What's the difference between being brain rot and knowing the trends? And so right before this podcast episode, I asked Anna to fill out this BuzzFeed quiz that we both took. It was all about how to know whether you are fully brain rot or not. And Anna, we have not shared our results yet, but I got a 11 out of 18. It said that I am not fully brain rot yet, but it is coming to me and I must beware.
I got a 13 out of 18. And I guessed a lot of them correctly. I used my context clues. It says there is no help for you. Your brain is certified fried. My condolences.
Okay, so I was a little too off.
I knew some of them. And what was funny about it as I was taking this quiz is I felt like even the BuzzFeed writer of this article didn't fully understand the terms. I was like, you are describing them in a way that like makes it seem like you're a millennial and you like asked your kids to describe it and you still like didn't fully comprehend it, which was kind of funny to me. But then some of them were like absolute misses. Like all the ones about streamers, I was like, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know any of the streamers. Some of them I knew, like there was a question about what the blank, and I've seen people say what the sigma, but I've never used that myself, so it wasn't that I'm so brain rot that I used it. It was that I'm so brain rot that I knew what it was type thing.
I'm like aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what a lot of these were, but the one that I did, I wouldn't even have called this like brain rot, but I guess like thinking about it now, it does make sense. One of the prompts was, what is it called when you get a weird and random TikTok while scrolling? And it was mythical FYP poll. And I feel like I have used that or like some variant of it of being like crazy FYP poll or something like that. But what was funny about it is I wouldn't necessarily see that comment on something that was like weird and random. I felt like that wasn't like an entirely accurate descriptor for what I would call like a mythical FYP poll. It's like even higher than that. It's when you see people doing like beyond insane things on the internet. Like I feel like that's when you would say it. So calling it just like, oh, a weird and random TikTok. Honestly, every TikTok I see is weird and random. It is a random assortment of videos. That's like the name of the game.
Yeah. I will say that I didn't actually know that one. I got it correct, but I just guessed. I had actually never heard of that before. The one that I was like, oh yeah, I actually like use this is it said fill in the blank. I build this for you page blank by blank. And it was brick by brick, and I don't think I've actually like commented that myself, but I have seen it.
You know about it. I feel similarly. Like I've definitely gotten or like even like felt the feeling that phrase is trying to encapsulate of like you see something that's so like not necessarily something you would be interested in, but like you could see how it ended up on yours. Be like, I built this for you page brick by brick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like whenever I see it, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
There's also some of them that are so random, and I'm like, I just know that like 14-year-old teenage boys are behind it, and like it just, that energy just exudes out of it. Like there was a picture of the galvanized square steel, and I knew what that was from just like existing on this planet Earth. Have no clue what that could possibly mean in like slang, TikTok, internet. Like what what are the teenagers talking about galvanized square steel? Like, what do they want from it? Like, what's happening with that? I have no clue.
Yeah. I felt the exact same way looking at that question. I think it was like at the very bottom. I was like, is this like a trick question to see if like, I thought maybe it was a trick question to see if your brain is good.
Yeah, are you paying attention at your construction job? Like,
yeah.
Overall, I did find the quiz to be interesting because I would have never placed myself as like knowing a lot of like the brain rot internet slang, but I do actually, like, after taking it, I do comprehend a decent amount of what's going on. I may not know exactly what it means, but I could like probably use it in a sentence.
Yeah, I completely agree. Honestly, I felt like it is brain rot in a certain way, but it wasn't my type of brain rot. Like, I'm just in a different niche than what this quiz was geared towards. But I still, like you, I knew of some things, and I think that's why I got such a low score, was because I knew some things, but like, it also wasn't geared towards me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So overall, I think we've learned that if you're a brand and you're wanting to use these brain rot tools on social media because it is such a high trending thing right now, I would just say be careful. Use it if you think that it is going to benefit you, but if you think that it's just a meme, it's just for fun, and it's not going to benefit you in any way, it might not be the right strategy. That's it, guys. Thank you for watching Untamed Socials podcast. Bye!
Bye!